Throughout this, we have a small group, so please feel free. Let's make it interactive, talk about things. If you have specific questions about your type of business or something you're doing, please feel free to ask. That'd be great. So today's seminar is website conversions, how not to turn away customers. So basically we're looking at how can we take an asset that we have, which is a website and is our primary marketing tool these days, and really turn it into something that is going to get results for us. You know, instead of, there's tactics that we can take that we can increase the number of people that take action, and really that's what we're going to go through is just some high-level stuff really, so that you understand what the approaches are, but then hopefully we can ask some questions to talk about in-depth scenarios. We've got seminars, we've been doing them every month for the last almost 2 years. We've got 2 that are coming up, one in September that's about driving traffic. So we're actually going to combine a number of tactics, pay-per-click, social media, content marketing, into one seminar that really talks about how do we get more people to the site. Then in October, we're actually going to talk about sales hacks, ways that you can, once you've got somebody to become a lead for your organization, you have them in the process of trying to close them as a sale. What are some things that you can do in that sales process, from presentations, proposals, and other aspects of that process to help close sales? So if you don't know us already, we are Insivia, Think Smart Act Bold. We're really a strategic marketing agency where we come in and help clients with the full breadth of services, everything from developing a smart strategy for marketing through to generating visitors to your site, converting them into leads, and helping close sales, and really providing that full gamut of services. That's fun. No?
Nothing, I just love that photo.
So conversion optimization, how do we optimize the conversions on our site? First place to start, I think, is what is a conversion? A lot of people just assume a conversion is I've got my contact form filled out, I've gotten a phone call, but there's a lot of other things that count as conversions too. Visiting a thank you page, signing up for an email list, download a white paper, make a purchase, listen to 3 audio tracks. We can really turn conversions into anything that we want, the actions that we want our visitors to take at the end of the day that we judge our success by. If it is something like listen to 3 audio tracks, there are services out there like Spotify that they get paid every time somebody listens to something. So we've really got to look across our site and what we're doing in marketing to figure out what do we want to consider as conversions. So what we're really talking about today is how do we drive more of these things? And so we look at conversion funnels where on the left side, you know, if we're attracting weak targets to our site, a smaller group of people, they're not as targeted, and then on the home page there's a high bounce rate, so there's a lot of people leaving, and then as we go through we're going to get less people at the end of our funnel. But by taking a look at what we're doing from a marketing standpoint, that we can get stronger targets, we can get more of them, we can decrease the bottlenecks through our website, and we can get more people to the next step, and then you're able to, on each of the pages, create a better experience to get increased conversions, and then move people down to the end of it, where you're getting a lot more people. And that's what we're talking about today, is how to change your funnel from the scenario now where you may be getting not many contacts at all, to how do we change that to being something where you're getting a lot of results out of your site. So for some of you that have been here before, you might have seen my revenue roadmap scenario, where we really look at the big picture of marketing. And I think this is a great example of how you want to look at a lot of different tactics to be successful. We have a lot of clients that come in and will say, I want to do just pay-per-click, or I really just want to focus on the conversion on my site, but they're missing elements of this roadmap. And if you're missing elements of the roadmap, you're really missing out on a big piece of opportunity. So what we have here is reaching prospects here on the left, things like search engine optimization, networking, sponsorship, pay-per-click, direct mail, email, all of these different aspects of how we reach people and create awareness. Typically, these tactics drive into 3 things, either a website, a microsite, or a landing page. If you're out there doing networking and you're handing out a card or you're sponsoring an event, it's probably your website. They heard your name, they're going to go check you out, they're just going to type in your address. If you're doing a pay-per-click campaign, you may send them for a specific product to a microsite, a site that has 3 or 4 links on it and is really focused around one specific thing. And then finally, if you're doing something like an email campaign, you may send them to a landing page, something that's very contained, doesn't allow them to go to anywhere else on the website, and drives them specifically into one action. Once we get people to a website, we have 2 ways that we're looking at: content that really gets them to sign up and connect with us, which goes into what's up in the top right, which is a marketing automation campaign. Marketing automation is I sign up for an email, for downloading a white paper. It automatically sends me an email the next day. It sends me one in 1 week. It sends me one in 2 weeks. And it by itself, based on what I signed up for, puts me in a sequence to stay in touch with me over time. And so then we also have the conversions where people are taking action right away, which is a phone call to form of the purchase, which goes into our sales process. We really need to have that marketing automation piece in there because people don't buy right away. Most people come to a website, and I think the statistic is that only 85% of people are ready to buy right now. So if we don't have something where we can connect to the people and then send emails or have some other connection with them over time, we're going to have a hard time converting leads. So there's 2 different types of conversions that we typically have. We have nurture and direct. Nurture is what we're talking about with marketing automation. They're not ready to buy today, so we want to create some sort of connection with them. So we're doing something like an email sign up. On the next to an article that we have sign up for our email list. We have a demo for a product. We have a download for a white paper where they have to exchange their email address. We have them fill out a calculator. And to get the results, we have to email them to them. So again, we collect the email address. Follows on social media, downloading a sample of our product, or even having one sent to us surveys. These are nurture. These are the people that aren't ready to buy today, so we have to give them this option. And again, if 85% of our people are not buying today, they're not ready to make that decision, this is a big, important piece of the puzzle, because we only have 25% that are really over there on the direct. And direct typically is a purchase, a call, or a contact form. If you notice, there's a lot less options on the direct. You know, for people to really interact with us and make a sale and close or become a hot lead, there's really less options. But this nurture list, at the end of the day, could really keep going on and on so that we have more options. So one of the first steps in getting increased conversions is having very targeted campaigns. The one thing that I do see a lot when we'll begin working with customers is that we'll go in and they're going to have very loose campaigns that they'll do an ad, but it'll be out there to everyone. And they'll be just driving to their homepage. They'll do different tactics that are more widespread and just general marketing. What you really want to do is figure out very targeted campaigns. But we're trying to go after CEOs of industrial companies, so we're going to create micro campaigns specifically around that target audience that has messages associated to what their problems are, has a landing page that talks about the things that are most important to them, has some sort of conversion point that is most likely for them to convert on. Because a CEO of an industrial manufacturing company is going to want to take a different action, whether that's a phone call or to download a sample, than potentially the purchasing manager of that same industrial company. That person might want to download a different type of form or a different type of document or take a different action. So we've really got to start taking our campaigns, and if we're not extremely targeted, we're sending a lot of people to our website and giving them a lot of information and messages that don't necessarily apply to them. And when we do that, we're basically turning them away. So one of the first very steps is to start becoming more micro-targeted towards the audiences that we're trying to reach. And just as some examples, campaigns focused on a specific target. or serve a specific purpose. So if someone searches a product like Cleveland Web Design, it goes to a product landing page, or they search a problem, retail marketing trends in 2014, or something specifically, it goes to a problem landing page. Or if they're searching for an industry, social media for manufacturing businesses. Again, breaking this up to being extremely specific, that we're creating landing pages that have to do with a product, a problem, or an industry. Those are three of the top ones that we tend to look at. One of my favorites is pains, that we're creating content and we're creating campaigns around pains and problems that our target audience is having. Because there are things, the people that you're trying to sell to are having issues in their job every day. There's some sort of problem they're dealing with, some sort of headache that they have to get over, some sort of result they have to get back to their company. If you can really think about what those pains are and create campaigns around them, you can be really successful. So just to kind of run through a couple examples. So this is did a search on content marketing. And Marketo is a marketing automation system, and they had an ad that popped up right away. And if you notice in their ad, they have content marketing as the first thing. They've been able to set that up so it's extremely targeted and you know what you're going to be clicking on. And then once they click that ad, they go to a very specific landing page. And the first words that it say are content marketing guide for demand generation. So what we're showing here is that when somebody does a search, we really want to give them feedback that they are in the right place. So both the title of the ad and the title of the page that they got to in the first words match what they were looking for. And so that's part of that targeted campaign piece. There's a statistic out there that people judge whether they'll read the rest of a paragraph or a page on the first 12 letters that are in a sentence. Letters, not words, letters. Because the way our eyes work, we're able to understand what the context of something is within the first couple letters of a sentence, and that helps us determine whether we want to continue reading or not. You may not realize it, but you probably do the same thing every day. You browse some sort of page that has a lot of content, you look at the first couple of letters of a paragraph, and you'll skip over it if it doesn't start with something that interests you. Then on this page that we have, landing page, you'll notice this is a real page. So they don't have main navigation. They have a contact us and a live chat. They have a form that you can fill out. They have social media so you can share it with other people. But they've kept it very streamlined. So they've made it extremely specific about what you were looking for, made the ad specific, made the content specific, and then they're giving you the ability to download a content marketing guide so they can capture your information and follow up with you. And again, even the piece that is the soliciting piece is extremely targeted towards what you searched. This is where you can create really successful campaigns if you start breaking up your target audience and developing these funnels for each one. Just to kind of show you some of the things that are good on this page, and I talked about them, but back up the campaign message. There's nothing more important than that. That's why I always say we'll get clients that'll do email campaigns, we'll do pay-per-click, we'll do direct mail campaigns, and they'll have an address on all of those that go to their homepage. You're basically sending someone to your site saying, find what you were interested in. But if we actually will create these advertising or these direct mailers that are extremely targeted and send them to something targeted, that's better. One clear action on a landing page. So in this one, the very clear action is download and part of that form. So it gives them only one option. When you start throwing a bunch of options at people, it gets confusing. And then enough info to make a decision. We want to make, this is one of those balance pieces, is that you don't want so little information that they're not going to want to download or not going to want to take action, but you need that right amount that they have everything that they need to make a decision to move forward on this page. And we'll talk a little bit more in the future of this presentation about how you determine some of those things, but that is important to think about is there is that right balance of what works and what doesn't. So I mentioned this already, but homepage is not a landing page. If at any time you're building campaigns and creating strategies, if included in that it says, let's have a link to our homepage, there's probably something wrong with the campaign. So I think it's important to always remember that a homepage is not a landing page. Your homepage is the face of the company and accessed by people who are specifically looking for it. This is by no means to say that in the conversion world that the homepage doesn't matter. It matters a ton because there are a lot of people that will see your name out there, meet you at networking events, will randomly click a link that someone created out there to your site. And if we don't focus on what the conversion rate is on our homepage and how we're getting more people to take action, we're not being successful. So even though I say that your homepage is not a landing page and it shouldn't be used in campaigns, it definitely should be focused on when you're trying to create better conversions. So I'm just going to show another example using the same company. So Marketo, I just searched their name. Obviously the link says Marketo and it gives me some other options given that it's Google. But now I come to a page where I've got a lot more options that you can see. You can see the difference between their landing page and their home page that we just showed. Their home page has a big message that shows a message about what they're about, products and services, customer successes, resources. Then it's got more pieces that they can click into. Obviously there's a lot more actions on here, but when someone's coming to a home page, there's different things that they might want to access, so we have to provide them that ability. So this is more like a home page. And just kind of showing, we'll talk about some of this stuff a little bit more later, but visual message confirming people are in the right place. Obviously if you search Marketo, you've got the logo, they're talking about something on the home page. This screenshot to me is a little bit off. There's 3 images. Usually I suggest to people have a main message, and they probably do on that first banner, but have a message that is what you do in a very simple, short statement. If someone has to think, or you're trying to do something flashy and interesting, like the #1 company in Northeast Ohio, they don't know what you do. So I really think that it's got to be clear and simple. If you go to ours, it's a strategic marketing agency, reach leads, reach prospects, convert leads, close sales. We say it in 2 seconds, this is what we do, they're confirmed they're in the right place and they can move forward. Too many people try and do flashy messages and that doesn't necessarily work.
That should be on the home page you sent.
Yes. Yes.
What about the landing page?
Landing page should relate to the ad that you created. So whatever the ad content is about. So whatever you made the headline for the ad, it should match for that landing page. So if you send a direct mailer out about web design services, it better go to a landing page that just says web design. I'll just say kind of an offhand comment. So a lot of sites used to do the rotating banner, and that was the big trend. People are really moving away from that because the stats are now showing that it's become one of those things that gets ignored. They'll see the first one, but then they'll just move on to the second and third. So you now see a lot of these sites that are built out longer scrolling pages, where you have a top section, a next section, and you'll see 3 or 4 main sections. That's basically replaced this because people stopped waiting. But with the way people read Facebook, LinkedIn, they'll scroll on their phones, everybody's habits have moved to moving down a page and actually paying attention. So the reason that design trends have moved away from those rotating banners to long scrolling pages is actually based in the science of the way people are now browsing websites. Design that conveys confidence, and I'll talk about this later, but one of the biggest things to keep people from not taking action is having a horrible looking site. When they don't feel that trust, when they feel like you don't know what you're doing, you're dated and out of touch with everything, if they get that impression as soon as they get there, they're not going to want to take action. Clear navigation, that's again one of those things. There was a trend for a while. I've been in this business a lot of years, and probably 8 years ago there was a trend where everybody wanted to do this stylistic, cute navigation so that it looked cool on the website. The problem is they do something interesting, but it would be really hard for people to see or find. So we've really moved towards, I think, those that do it smart, as clear as possible. Keep it in the same location, either at your top right or on your left. It's got to be in those 2 locations. The contrast between the colors has to be really good. You know, white with purple text, you know, simple, not too many options. It has to be really easy for people to know where they want to go next on the site. And then clear actions, you know, putting buttons like free trial, it's hard to see them at the bottom, but having some clear actions on the home page available for people to move forward is extremely important in conversion. So just a fun test as we go through here. What do we think? Is this a landing page or home page? Those who think it's a landing page, can take a look for a second. Those who think it's a home page. All right, we got a couple. You're right. So obviously we have links to navigation, we have some major message, you know, we have some actions. How about this one? Who thinks it's a landing page? Man, you guys are good. So we've really got one main action, we're missing our navigation, we're trying to funnel people in. So when they got there, they've got the message that backs it up, and then they've got clear action and enough information for them to make a decision, like who they worked with, maybe a quote, the main features, and some sort of message. So, kind of the difference between the two. So web analytics. We're going to talk a little bit more later about web analytics, and it's really important to do. But before we do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about split testing. How many people know A/B testing and heard it? So we get some people that understand it. So A/B testing is a great option, especially e-commerce, is really well used for, but it can also be for B2B. I do typically see with clients, if they're in e-commerce, they're much more open to it, but I think the B2B world and those that are selling services should consider A/B testing and multivariate testing just as much as others. So what it basically is you've got a number of visitors, let's say 1,000, and you're going to have version A of your page, and version A has one message, it has a button in red, and then version B has a different message and a button in green, and it's going to automatically split the traffic. So if 1,000 people come to your page, your landing page, it'll send 500 to one and 500 to the other. And then, based on the action you can set up what you want it to track for, it will tell you which one does better on the campaign. So if you're looking at how many people clicked that button to take action or filled out a contact form, you can have that be your test based on the color of the form and the number of fields, and then it will tell you 29% more people filled out the form that looked this way. So it gives you that ability. And people had a question I think I got last time I did this seminar was, you know, how much should you test to figure out whether something's right? They do have a statistical amount that tells you what the accuracy of these tests are. I typically say, you know, I mean, you want to do it based off the number of people and not a certain amount of time. I've been asked many times, oh, should I keep it going for a week or a month? It should be more like, let's define we want to get 2,000 visitors. If we only get 200 visitors a month, it's going to take us a long time, so we should be driving more traffic to it to find out, but we should set a number. We want to figure out of 2,000 people, what is the likelihood that this stuff is happening. So I'm just going to run through some fun tests. Well, fun for me, probably not for you guys. I enjoy this stuff. So we have a control. So what the natural was, which is start your free 30-day trial. And we have a treatment, what they were testing for. Start my free 30-day trial. So one word is different. That's it between those buttons. And this is for a sign up for plans. So they ran a test on it. What do we think? Who thinks that the control did better? One. Who thinks the treatment did better? Majority. Treatment had a 90% increase in click-through rate during the campaign period. So they ran it, and my free trial had a 90% higher click-through rate. So something simple, and more of this test is to show you, because the one thing I think when you're doing the A/B testing is that you can't necessarily take something that worked for someone else and say it's definitely going to work for your site. But more what I want to show is that there are little things that can impact whether people make a decision. I don't think I have the example in this presentation, so I'll just talk about it. My favorite one by far, and I've said this a lot of times, so you may have heard it before. My favorite one is there's an e-commerce site for baby products. And they did 2 tests. They had a picture of a baby and they had a button. The picture of the baby on the one side was looking straight out. The other test was the baby looking at the button. The one with the baby looking at the button was fanatically higher than the others. And the reason is, if you're looking up at that thing and I look at you, I'm going to pull my eyes that way because I'm wondering what you're looking at. Versus if the baby's looking right at me, I'm just going to stare right in your eyes and I'm not going to look at the button that's sitting right over there. And it's that natural psychology that we have, that we use every day in our life, that we look in someone's eyes when they're looking at us versus we look where someone's looking when they're looking away. That natural psychology actually affects whether we get people to take action on our website. And that's why I love this stuff, because you can go in and test it out, and you can learn things not only about how you improve your results, but also about just general psychology of the world and how people interact with things. So we'll do another one real quick. I think I have a couple here, not too many. So we have an add to cart on the left side, add to cart on the right side. Who thinks the left side? Who thinks the right side? Guys are getting good at this. 35.81. On this one, they had statistical confidence of 98%. They're able to do that based on how many people they got to fill it out. That's what you get into when you do these tests, is they'll give you a statistical confidence based on the number of people that go through the test. So there is a 98% confidence that if you use that button, you're going to get 35% more people to click add to cart. Imagine on an e-commerce site where you're able to do that. When I originally started getting into this stuff, so I was doing web design, all this for years, and I really got interested in this subject because I read an article called The $1 Million Button. And they talked about how this e-commerce site had a button that was like green on the website, and at a certain point they had like the title, the image, some text, and then an add to cart button. And then all of a sudden they did a test and they moved the add to cart button up so that it was next to the image, so you had title, image, button, and then description of the product. And they changed it to red, and they were able to track $1 million more in sales every single month associated to that change. And I remember this. I read this article probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I went, oh my God, there's a whole new world that I haven't even gotten into with this.
So it's the color that makes a difference.
Well, actually, it was the color, but it was more so the where it was on the page, because at that time, most people's browsers were a certain size, and with the title, the image, the text, and then the button, most people got to the page and they didn't even realize that this was something that they could buy. But by moving that button up, they get to that page and they have this instant mindset of, okay, this is a product, I can buy it, so I'm going to stay here and I'm going to have the option to click the button. So I think this is the last one. So this is simple, a big button versus a little button. And the big button actually had a 10% decrease, statistical confidence, 95%. There's been a design trend of starting to make buttons a little bit bigger because people assume if you make them bigger, that people are going to click on them more. At least with this test, and again, I think the thing to remember is this is not something that I would go back and make every one of your buttons small. But at least with this test, for this website, in the context of what it was, them changing the size of the button was able to, well, they were seeing that there was a 10% decrease in the number of clicks for creating an account. So this is not just about buttons and actions. We did a couple of those, but so on our landing pages, just to show you some examples. So I have a series of 3 of these and kind of showing this. So this is a landing page. You have a form over here, and there's something that they call a tactic called encapsulation. So if you notice on the right side with the encapsulation, that form and that contact really stands out comparatively to the rest, and your eyes are just drawn to it. So there's a tactic in design that they use called encapsulation to pull out different elements so that your eyes are drawn to them. And if you're developing a landing page, and let's say we're not sending 1,000 people there, we're sending 1 million people to a landing page, something little like that could make a huge difference in what our results are. The next is color contrast. We talk about this a lot in design. But again, look at the simple thing is that we move from what we had before, which is just encapsulating it, to adding a color. And again, our eyes are drawn even more. So you start compounding these things upon each other, and you get much better results. And then there's directional cues. We'll use these in sites sometimes. How can you use content or images or other pieces to create visual cues to drive people in a direction? So how many people have heard of an F pattern before? It's good, Matt. I'm glad you heard of it. So F pattern is a reading pattern that they typically have on websites. And what it is that they've done eye tracking to show it. This isn't exact, but it gives you an idea. So people tend to read the top, they'll come down a little bit, read a smaller amount more, and then they'll just scan down the page. And this happens across the web. So we typically talk to people about when they're building different pages for their site of trying to create content in an F pattern. You have a major headline, you have one or two sentences, and then you have a bullet point list, because that's the way people read. And I say it constantly. You can see on this site that there's paragraph after paragraph after paragraph on their page. And I say this to clients all the time because they want to put a lot on their site. Whatever message you have down here in this paragraph, there's probably a chance that 99.9% of the people that visit your site have never read it. So if it's anything important, I just hope you know that no one's ever read it before. So I think that that's important to kind of understand about, on a conversion side, not only how people read, but then that applies to whether they get the information they need to make a decision to take action, whether that's a call, whether that's filling out a contact form, or even again where your button fits in the page. On this one, you can kind of see that people's eyes are willing to go to the right a little bit, so that's why you move that add to cart or that contact form in that position. So it's not only about how we color things or the size, but it's just generally about how people's eyes tend to move, left to right. We'll read in bulk at the top and then just scan going down. Then I want to talk about images. So this is again another one, and this is the image is different, is the only difference between these, but this had a 19% increase in the number of people that filled out the contact form. So there's a campaign for dinner with Barack. And the image on this side, we have him just almost by himself laughing. Then on this one, and he looks a little bit more formal, on this one, you can see his sleeves are rolled up. You can see other people in the conversation. You can see their faces and that they're interacting with them. This kind of goes back to that baby. But naturally as humans, we react to these things that this one looks more formalized, less like we're going to get a chance to interact with someone and a good experience. Whereas the image on the right side increased the number of people that took action because it just made you feel better about the event that you were doing. So when we're choosing our images for our site, it can be little things that we don't realize that can make a great difference on how many people interact or contact. And again, especially for, this isn't just for e-commerce, but for B2B, imagine all the people that are visiting your site, 19%. How many people for B2B would like to get 19% more of their visitors to make a phone call into their company? I guarantee you would. So, it's simple things like that that can make a huge difference. Just to kind of, I think, finalize some of this stuff that we talked about, but the current methods used for improving conversion, this is just a survey that they did out to marketers, but A/B testing does hit the top. Copy optimization, so going in there and changing copy. Customer journey analysis, which is you actually look in analytics and see what a customer's journey through your site is and try and analyze what's the process. Online surveys, feedback taking, cart abandonment analysis in e-commerce, that's huge, is you look at why did people abandon a cart, what happened during their process, and a number of these. So A/B testing is from major marketers that have been surveyed, still the #1 tactic that they use for how they increase conversion. So let's talk a little bit about analytics. How many people have analytics on their site? How many people have looked at it in the last 30 days? Not too bad. I'm impressed. So analytics, if you don't have it, please go get it signed up for it and get it on your site. It can provide a ton of information, not only about your site, who's visiting it, pretty much everything. And I always even go into, you can get a lot of insights into how you sell your business. If you're doing advertising campaigns and you see which ones are doing better, and you're doing some of this testing, you can take the messages that are doing well or getting good click-throughs, and you can get a sense of what you should use in direct mailers, what you should use in other advertising, maybe even sales collateral that you're doing. So the nice thing about analytics, it doesn't have to be just figuring out what's going on your site. It can be a good insight into how you can improve your entire messaging for your business. So there's opportunities to do that if you look deeply into it. So I'm just going to talk about a couple analytics numbers that I look at a lot and care about. Bounce rate. So bounce rate is a wonderful site. We didn't design it. Yeah, it might be thought. But bounce rate is basically someone comes to a page and leaves right away. So they bounced off of it. The one important thing to think about with bounce rate, so when you go into analytics, it's going to tell you your overall site bounce rate. Never look at that. It's not something that matters. Typically on a site, you're going to have a lot of different content. You're going to have articles, you're going to have landing pages, you're going to have your home page, service pages, all this stuff that people are coming into, and the bounce rates are going to vary a ton. On our site, we actually, for our overall site bounce rate, I think it's somewhere around 70%. Which if I saw that for a client, I would be like, oh my God, we've got to, move mountains to fix this. But what it is that we've got a couple articles out there. We've got one about how do you change the image for Facebook when you share something. So you can actually set the image when somebody shares one of your pages, what image shows up. And we have an article that walks people through how do you do that. The unfortunate thing is anybody that reads that article is probably a competitor of ours and will never click through to anything else on our website. And they're there to solve that one problem. I don't know how to get this image changed. I need to get it changed. I don't care what you're offering me. And we've tried tactics of putting downloads and other things on there, but people are there to solve that one problem and they will never click through to anything else. And we have a 99% bounce rate on that one single page. It throws off our entire website. But if you actually go to our homepage and look at the bounce rate of our homepage or some of our landing pages, we're typically about 20%, and some of our landing pages will get 10 to 15%, which is super ideal and awesome. So we really want to make sure when we're looking at bounce rate that we're not doing it at the overall site, that we're going into our specific campaigns and pages or our homepage, and we're looking at what that bounce rate is. So we talked about some things earlier about how you can improve your bounce rate. The first is making sure that you have a clear and concise message when they get there, that you've got clear navigation so that they can take action, that the page looks good. Again, you come somewhere like this, you don't know where to click, and you don't feel like you're very safe if you do, because you might download a virus. So this is where, when we talk to customers about it's important to have a really good looking site, the reason is that it's going to decrease your bounce rate because people make a decision in the first 2.5 to 3 seconds of whether they want to stay on the site. They get that instant feel, do I like this or do I not? Do I feel safe or do I not feel safe? And if they don't, they click backwards. So we really want to make sure we're looking at some of those factors to make sure that we're getting a good bounce rate. So traffic sources, the other great thing to look at in analytics is where are people coming from? What is working? Is it pay-per-click? Is it searches? Is it sites? And then how do you use that information to make improvements? So a good example is we worked with a data center company and we realized that there was a lot of inbound traffic coming from this random data center directory that was out there. It was something like 200 to 300 visits a month, which is not a bad amount of traffic. But this directory that they didn't even know that they were on went to their homepage, and it was very specific about managed cloud services. So the directory was extremely specific, and then on their side, they just had a random link that went into their homepage. We saw all this traffic coming through, and we saw that most of it didn't do anything, it didn't convert, didn't provide anything. But what we were able to do is create a very specific landing page that was about the subject that the directory was about. Call the directory up and say, hey, can we get this link changed so that it goes to this page? And they did that for us. And then put some sort of action on the landing page, and all of a sudden we turned those 200 or 300 visitors that for years had been being thrown away, and we started seeing conversions roll in. And so what you can do is you can really use analytical data like this to go back through and find opportunities to get results. And that's where it really takes using analytics and being able to go through it and just discover and find things that are opportunities that improve your business. You know, I talk about exit pages a lot. This is something that I find important in e-commerce especially, but it can also be important in other areas. So an exit page is, you know, where people leave the site most. So they go here and then they end. There's got to be a reason for it. Was it something that turned them off or some other issue? The good example from the past that I have that we learned from exit pages is we had an e-commerce site, and it was one that the product wasn't, they did custom computers, so they did these high-end, this guy was putting, you know, neon lights and steam and all this stuff in these custom computers that he was building for those guys that wanted something that just was really cool and looked really cool. But the name wasn't known and no one knew about it. So we were watching the analytics on the site. People would actually go and look at the products. They would hit the add to cart button. They would go to that page that kind of summarized the order. They would hit checkout. And then they would leave the site and not order. And we were literally getting maybe one order a month, I think it was. So we looked at the analytics and found that people would hit that checkout page where they'd start filling out their billing information, and they would go up and hit the support page, and then they would exit the site. And so our thought process was, after just looking at that and doing some thinking, is wow, this guy, his name's not known, he, you know, is a small retailer, they're buying a $5,000 to $10,000 computer off the web. So probably people want to know what are the return policies, what are the scenarios for support, and all of these different pieces. So we actually took information and put it on the checkout page. We put what the return policy was, what the support was that they provided for the machine, and other different factors. And all of a sudden, it went from taking one order to increasing and being something. I think we were doing, you know, 10 to 15 a month, just by adding some information. Because what it was is people needed information to make a decision, and we weren't supplying it to them. And then when they went to that page, they still weren't getting what they needed. But by looking at what the exit page was, we were able to discover, oh, there's a missing piece to the puzzle here. So a lot of this information can be interesting. So I don't know how many people have seen heat mapping and scroll maps. Anybody have this on their site? Probably not. We've been doing this a lot more lately with customers that we're getting involved with. It's just to get a sense. So click through. So heat mapping is basically, it'll show you a heat map of where people are clicking on the page. The scroll mapping will actually show you where do people spend the most time viewing. So in this case, the white actually shows 100%. Red is somewhere, I think, or red is around either 50%, and then blue tends to be like less than 20%. Spend the time as that is the middle of their page. So you get a sense, especially now that we are moving to these longer scrolling pages, where are people spending the most time? And then you can potentially change things. Usually there's stuff that we'll see like a major change in the section color, and if you don't set it up right, that you've got something, and that's why now you see designs where they're breaking the sections with some sort of image or content, is because people think they've hit the end of the page, so they stop scrolling. So you really have to, you can use things like this to determine how can you change the page to get more people to move through. Same thing with the heat mapping. So it's cool stuff. There's the one that we use, Crazy Egg, is pretty inexpensive. You throw it on like Google Analytics and set up the pages, and you get good information like this so that you can see. So I went through that fast. This is my last one. So lots of time for questions. Like I said, it was kind of high level, but I'm happy to go in depth or even talk about other subjects, content marketing, pay-per-click, whatever it might be. Yeah.
And your page where you had Google Analytics and how many page visits and how long you're on site, were those good stats in your opinion or not? Where you had 2.5 pages, the bounce rates, can you walk through those and tell us what your thoughts are?
Yeah, sure. I think it has to do with context of what you're looking for, you know. And whenever we're starting out and going through a campaign with someone, it's working through what are the KPIs that we want to judge as successful. I think if you're generically looking at your site and saying, is my site working? I think that you can look at some of these numbers and say, okay, well, we're only getting one page, one page on average, or, look back at different months and say what was the difference, or if you made a change. I think kind of generically for your site, that stuff is nice, but it really doesn't tell you specifically. What I'd rather do is go into very specific campaigns and say, for this advertising we're doing, or for this, what's our bounce rate? For the people that came and hit this page, how many pages do they end up visiting? Or going back and looking at something specific like the channel. So you can break this up where you only see visits from Facebook, and you see how many pages per visit are from Facebook, and then you go and change it and you see, just look at LinkedIn. And then maybe for Facebook you get 1.5 pages per visit, but Facebook or LinkedIn you get 3.5. All of a sudden you get a sense, oh wait, LinkedIn's a good strategy for us. We really want to go after that. So I think some of these numbers, like the number of page views and the pages per visit, can be good, but they definitely shouldn't be, again, like bounce rate looked at in a vacuum. I think you always have to have it related to something that you're trying to accomplish. Whether that's to a channel like LinkedIn, Facebook, or an email, or that's to a specific campaign, and looking at how those numbers interact. But I do think, I guess looking at them, you can get a good sense. The other one that I do think is extremely important, and this one can maybe be looked at generically, is new visits. So we had that discussion about people don't make a decision to buy right away. I love to see more people being return visitors, not new visitors, because that means they left. They probably put you on a short list that they want to work with you, and then they came back to do more due diligence. If you have a really high new visit rate, 90, 95%, something's not compelling people to come back, and you're definitely not getting them signed up on your email list. So that can be one of those indicators to say that there's generally a marketing problem going on here. So that would be maybe one of the other ones that I look at. There's so much information in analytics. I know some people get super overwhelmed when they go in there. I mean, it's just about, I think, kind of understanding the different nuances, and that's why most people bring someone like us in, because we look at so many that we're able to see quick insights and say, here's an issue, So.
Well, what about traffic sources? Our social media campaigns bring in about 20% to our website. I have no idea if that's good or not.
Yeah.
I just don't know. What would be a good makeup of traffic sources?
I don't think there's a rule of thumb. I mean, I wish there was, and every industry is different. I think it more, again, has to do with your marketing, your overall marketing strategy. Is social media a big part of your marketing strategy, and are you spending dollars on it? And if you are, and you're not getting those results, that's something you have to go back with. I don't think there's a rule of thumb for it, but for us more, it gives us insight into what's working, what's not, or if in a certain month, if we're doing different things, we're advertising more, we're doing this, how well is stuff working? And again, it's about looking at that micro rather than the macro. I could care less what the percentage of visitors from social media are, but if for some reason I can go into the campaign of Facebook and learn that I've gotten 10 contacts out of it, that's an extremely important fact. And now I can do something with it and say, let's increase our Facebook, usage. So. Cool. Well, thank you for coming. Feel free if you want to sit and chat with like Matt or myself or Kelly and talk over some things, or stop over at the office. Definitely appreciate everybody coming. And, anything else we can do for you, please let us know.